You've probably never heard of Mintabie, a tiny opal mining town in the far north of South Australia. Long-time residents lured there by the chance of striking it rich say it's a frontier paradise. But the state government says it's the centre of criminal activity and wants to shut it down and return the land to traditional owners. As Landline's Patrick Martin discovered, those who call it home are not going quietly. And Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander viewers are advised this story may contain images and voices of those who have died.
It's an ancient industry built on the dream of finding a fortune deep underground. The right opal can fetch hundreds of thousands of dollars. But semi-black Mintabie opal has an almost mythical reputation.
2 years ago, there was nothing but barren land here. Then the miners came with their bulldozers and heavy drilling equipment to exploit the seemingly endless reserves of opal at Mintabie. We were told one mine had already yielded $400,000 worth of opals.
For decades, thousands of people journeyed to the middle of South Australia's outback in the hope of striking it rich. In 1983, Marg Venturi came to deliver bread to friends before travelling to Darwin. She caught opal fever and never left.
It's just world-renowned, a product that the world want, and it's very stable opal. Here it's some of the most beautiful crystal opal you'll get anywhere.
The 70-year-old still remembers her first impression of the place she would call home.
Walking in the pub with about 30 men in hard hats at lunchtime having their lunch. That was my first impression. I thought, my God, where have I come? What is this place? But it just grew on me. We just loved it right from the beginning. You stay, Rex. All right, come on.
She says Mintabie is a place like no other.
It's just unique. It's in the middle of the bush. We don't have all the hassles of the city bustle and hustle.
Marg is continuing to make the most of her outback life, but the realities of living in Mintabie in 2019 are stark. So, Marg, this is the centre of Mintabie?
Yep, this is it. This is our square, where we used to have 3 rows of cars in front of the pub. That's our post office and telecentre, Centrelink, and clinic. We've got a clinic over there. And our pub.
What are some of the fondest memories you've got in the pub?
Yeah, we've had a lot of fun in the pub. Fancy dress, we do lots of things, or we used to. Now we've run out of people, unfortunately. Yeah, it's all come to a standstill. It's bloody sad, that's all I can say.
The sprawling dirt streets of Mintabie are the veins of a once thriving outback town.
The first day I ever got to Mintabie, the car broke down. And this little Aboriginal girl came up to me and she said, "Hello, my name's Rosie." She said, "Mintabie's my home." And with that, she starts pushing the car. Just beautiful. Just, yeah, it was special.
Returning to the place she called home for 37 years, memories flood back to Christine Watkinson.
Oh, mate, it was an amazing place. Every business was open. There were restaurants here. On the weekend, we'd all party a little bit. The kids would all be asleep under the tables on their sheepskin rugs. And we'd lift up the tablecloth, check on them, and we'd take it in turns. And, yeah, it was just really special. The Aboriginals used to play against the townsfolk here, the men, and they'd come out in their Reeboks and their Nikes and their flash boots and whatever, and they were all as big as brick shit houses, really big boys. And then out came the Aboriginals and they all wore one boot and they used to kick the ball with the bare foot. They were beautiful. Yeah, we always used to barrack for the Aboriginals because they really deserved to win. They did usually too. They were good.
But today isn't a happy homecoming. Today, Christine is collecting memories, not making new ones. The good old days seem like a lifetime ago.
Come on in and have a look at where I lived for 37 years and what's left of it. Excuse the mess, it's been a work in progress moving.
So if you were here for 37 years, there must be a lot of memories in this home.
Oh, hundreds, thousands. Yeah.
How long have you been packing this place up for?
A year and a bit.
And looks like you've still got a fair bit to go.
Yeah, since April last year.
Did you ever think your time in Mintabie would end like this?
No, never. Never. I thought I'd be here till I died, to be honest.
What has news of the town's closure done to the community?
It sent most of us into a tailspin, really.
In 2018, the former South Australian Labor government announced it would be closing the town of Mintabie and handing the land back to traditional owners. The decision was largely based on a report that found the town to be a hub for drug and alcohol running to Aboriginal people in the APY lands. There were also concerns about escalating crime in the town. The current state Liberal government upheld the decision. Residents had 12 months to clean up their properties and leave town. The law-abiding residents feel they're being punished.
If the government knows that there's drugs being sold here, do something about it. You know, the police, it's up to the police. I mean, it's not up to us as individuals. We're not the law.
The announcement left about 30 permanent residents 12 months to leave Mintabie. Like many, Marg is determined to stay in the town, which is now home to about 15 people. But anxieties lay beneath the surface.
Well, just the not knowing, not knowing if the government are going to help us move or compensate so I can go and get something else to live in.
It's not just the town in question. The future of the Mintabie opal field is also in limbo. Miners once swarmed over what was the most productive opal field in the country, but with finds becoming rarer, only a handful of miners are left. Mark Houben has mined at Mintabie since 1982, but even at 80 foot underground, he's not immune from the town's woes.
The general word is we're out, but, you're not out until you're out. So we'll just keep carrying on until we know.
So you'll keep mining until you're dragged out?
Yep, keep going until we're dragged out.
The state government says the field's future will be determined after negotiations over the town are finished. On the other side of the opal field, miner Kevin Davies is angry and defiant.
If this is what the fair go for Australia means, well, the rest of Australia's screwed.
He says he's not going anywhere despite government offers of public housing for residents in other towns.
Well, we don't have mains power, so you rely on solar or petrol or diesel generators. The mobile phone service is not real good. There's no shops here anymore, and I would rather put up with that than living in a city.
Kevin, what will it take for you to leave Mintabie?
It'll take the government to kick me up the arse to go. Otherwise, I'm going to stay here, and that's it. I'm not going anywhere.
Contention over this land has raged ever since the first opal was dug out of the ground. In the 1970s, the South Australian government and Pidginjarra and Yunkinjarra people started negotiations over land rights.
The miners have already asked the state government to withdraw its land rights bill. The miners argue the legislation will only increase racial tension in the area. Already one man from the nearby Indalkina community has been shot, and there's been stories of Aboriginals obtaining liquor from sly grog shops.
Aboriginal people wanted rights to protect their culture and have their say over land use.
They then walked off into the bush, urging us to follow, where they showed us the place where the Dreamtime men from nearby Mintabie came to die. Then, in a spontaneous outburst, one of the men began singing the dreaming story and the connection of this place to the opal fields at Mintabie.
The Act was signed in 1981, giving traditional owners freehold rights over 102,000 square kilometres of land, including Mintabie.
30 years long enough, and we've got nothing in return, so it's time we get our land back,
Mark Campbell is a traditional owner of the Mintabie area.
Mining's been all over, so we got to put all the dirt back into the holes, make it safe for people to walk around, and, reshape it and how it once looked.
Back at the Mintabie Hotel, locals are keeping a brave face, but there's only one thing on their minds.
But if they're going to close the town down, I've got nothing to do. I'll be unemployed.
The state government called last drinks at Mintabie for June 30 this year, but those who are left in this once bustling front bar aren't going quietly. The Mintabie Miners Progress Association launched last-minute legal action against the state government to try and prevent the eviction. It's seeking an injunction, arguing the APY Lands Act is invalid.
To launch a legal argument to reduce the rights of traditional owners, I think is just appalling.
Richard King is the General Manager of the APY Lands.
I was a little bit shocked that a group of residents who have created a situation where a lease has to be handed back to traditional owners because of their behaviour would suddenly scream victim. And I think we've got to all realise in Australia that Aboriginal people have been here for over 60,000 years and they've practised their culture for 60,000 years.
He fully supports the state government's move to close the town to better protect Aboriginal people.
Having a gateway drug like marijuana coming in and alcohol coming into the lands is not good long term. When you've got low socioeconomic groups, whether you're in West Sydney or whether you're in APY or even whether you're in Arnhem Land, those sort of drugs do have an impact.
He says once the town is remediated, traditional owners will decide what to do with the land. The clean-up is expected to cost $2 to $3 million, and it remains unclear who will foot the bill. The state government says it's continuing to work constructively with Mintabie residents, but wouldn't comment on negotiations. Meanwhile, the packing up continues in Mintabie.
What's your message to the South Australian government over the closure of Mintabie?
If you're going to close this, let the people leave with dignity. Help them to leave and do the right thing, because they're not young. They're not. Most of the people here are over 80. You know, it needs to be done properly. You know, show them some respect. You know, we're not all drug dealers. This is a beautiful place, and I'd like it to be remembered as that, not for other reasons.